Welcome to the Volunteer and Combination Officer Section weekly webinar series. We are excited today to have two presenters with us to talk about what is probably one of the hottest topics in the fire service today, and that is transitioning your department from the way it is today to the way it needs to be tomorrow. But before we do that, we have a little political stuff to do, and that this is a voice over IP thing. So if you have problems with it, you can send an email to webinars@ifc.org, or like I tell people, if you have problems hearing it, log off, log right back in. Sometimes that will fix your problem as well. And then we do have a chat room. If you want to chat, go to there. If you want to tell me who's here, I hope our friend from Puerto Rico is here. And if you have questions and answers, any handouts, that after the presentation, they will be uploaded into the handouts portion of the website. So what is the VCOS doing? I know I say this every time. It's like, I'm not going to read you all the things on the slides, but let's suffice it to say that the VCOS is very busy. We think we're doing the right thing for the volunteer and combination officer section, our members, and that's really what it's about, is how to serve the members. So the webinars are a bigger thing this year. We've been doing them every week. Symposium in the Sun in November. If you haven't registered for that yet, registration will be opening in about 2 weeks. We're looking to develop a Chiefs Academy, in-person workshops, and various things like that. We do have a great partnership with the the National Volunteer Fire Council, and that has improved relationships between these two organizations. So we have a clear focus on where it is, where we need to be, and what we're doing. We hope that you have downloaded some of our ribbon reports. Whether you're a member or not, you can download these reports free of charge at vcos.org. And we have 8 different reports that are out there, and we encourage you to go to the website and look at those. We do have the webinar series. Here is a schedule. If you want to take a screenshot of this so you can find the QR code and what we're going to do and that sort of thing. So we have John Murphy, an attorney, going to talk next week about 10 actions that will get you in trouble if you fail to do that. And then Jason Chief Coy is going to come back in a couple weeks and talk about 10 things he's learned being fire chief. And so we're looking forward to those webinars and a great attendance as well. We have a town hall scheduled for our VCOS Board of Directors. And again, take a screenshot of that so you got the QR code so you can go ahead and get registered for that. This will be our first town hall where I've told the board members you each get to talk for about 3 to 5 minutes, and then we're going to take questions from the audience. So we want to hear what the members think the VCOS is doing, what we could be doing, and maybe what else needs to be changed in the fire service. So we encourage you to attend the town hall. That'll be our first one. We're looking at doing one quarterly, and we're thinking the second one will be on recruitment and retention, specifically aimed at that topic. So some other upcoming events, not just for the VCOS, but for the IFC in general. Fire Rescue International is in August in Dallas. Encourage you to go attend that as well. So this presentation today is by 2 experienced fire chiefs, Chief Ron Chivas, who spent 15 years as an assistant fire chief and a fire chief, and then he is going to be celebrating next year his 50th year in the business. And Chief Jason Coy is also here, and he will be celebrating his 14th year as fire chief next month. Both have led departments that understand transitioning, understand some of the challenges. And so with that, Ron, I'm going to turn it over to you, and it's break a leg, so to speak.
There you go. Thank you, sir. So we discussed this, and as any presentation I've ever done, I always mention PowerPoints are a thing of the past, so to speak, but everyone still uses them. So we're not going to, as John says, we're not going to try to read everything on the slides. This is just kind of keep both Chief Coy and I on schedule, I guess. Make sure we're not missing anything, but just feel free to chime in, and John will get the questions back to us. So transitioning, again, this is something for myself in my county, right outside of Charlotte, North Carolina. My station and my staff were the first in the county to make a transition where we hired. We started with part-time, but again, the question is, why transition, and why do we need to look to that model?
Yeah, Chief, I think it's a great starting point for the webinar, right? Is the Red Ribbon Report was written in 2005, identifying that many organizations were in this dilemma of how do we meet the needs of our community and how do we meet the needs of our membership to supply the service that was being asked upon us in 2005. The VCOS right now is in the process of rewriting that Red Ribbon Report. A lot of that material is going to carry through, but in the last 20 years, things have changed a little bit, and have we identified what that looks like? And in our organization, we went to a full-time person that needed to take some of the administrative roles off, and so we had to look at that first. And so I think, Chief, we're going to have fun discussing that transition as we go through the rest of the slides.
That's right. And I know one of the first questions that I'm asked in just about anything we do is, particularly if you're all volunteer, where do you start? Who's the first person do you hire? Do you hire the fire chief? Do you hire a driver? Do you hire the firefighter? Of course, my answer is you hire an attorney first, particularly if you're going to start paying anybody. So that can change with the agency. You hire whatever you need, honestly. But Chief Coy, you said, the legal and the administrative parts to this thing are going to increase by a tremendous amount. So if you're not a full-time chief or either a part-time chief, that administrative task certainly could be daunting.
It becomes really, really daunting, Chief. You're exactly right. Absolutely. And I think there's a piece of that to say that this is local. And although the Red Ribbon Report and VCOS and what we're going to talk about today from our own experiences worked for us, parts and pieces might work for you. Don't expect to just adopt a system to fit your local organization, because it is local, and the local impact and your local culture and your local community all influence what that transition looks like and why the transition occurs.
Yeah. And again, there's not going to be a silver bullet at the end of this presentation. There's no dust in our pockets that we throw out in the air and make things change. But the items that maybe we point out, you change, you adapt to your agency, make them work for you. There's very, very few things in the fire service that are new, obviously, but you find the best, and how we do across the country, or whether we're traveling around or we're coming to you webinar or whatever, the agencies that do the best jobs is who we model or we try to gain from. So best practices, we take those items, those policies, those procedures, and show you, and you just adapt those to fit you. So again, there's no silver bullet. There's no answer to meet everybody's needs. You got to fit it. You got to fit yourself.
Absolutely.
So where do you start? The easiest, or not the easiest, the best place to start is with your department, your stakeholders, your members, and start early. Make sure the members are very aware of what's going on. Make sure you're not threatening the membership. Make sure you're not threatening the volunteers. That's the first thing they're going to look at. And same way with my agency. We had about 30 volunteers total, and they were all thinking, well, we're going to replace the volunteers. We'll have nothing to do. And then a few of them threatened to leave. None of that happened. None of that happened. It just turned out that once we made sure that they were aware that we were getting these paid part-time people to help them, not the other way around. So as long as your membership and again, your stakeholders, whether it's the county, the township, or ever who pays your bill, so to speak, make sure the stakeholders, and that includes the community, that includes Mr. and Mrs. Smith, and the people that you're supporting.
Yeah, exactly, Chief. I think that's a key point. And also, when you go through that process of actually hiring that first person, whatever it is, make sure that those folks that are either in your system that are going to get promoted to that full-time or part-time position, or that person that you hire from outside the agency, if that's what you chose, understands the value of your membership and understands the importance of being a servant. When I took the role of chief for this organization, my job was to steady the ship and become a servant to our members, to take away the stuff that was a problem or a challenge for them, and make that my burden so that they could be freed up to do what they want to do, which was serve their community, participate in training, have that camaraderie. So creating that culture of servant mindset is critical as you go through this transition. If you wave a big bat and just say, we're doing this without the input, like the chief said, from all of your stakeholders, and you do it thinking that you're better than any member in your organization, you're probably not going to be successful.
That's right. And that mindset, the servant mindset you're speaking of, I've certainly seen that change over the years. You know, when I joined, and probably like most of us, we did that because we were the community. The fire department was the community, and we supported the community supported the fire department, and we supported the community. So we did that because we were the fire department, and so that today seems to be a job. Seems to be, although the volunteers join to be fun, to have things to do, it is about serving in the community, obviously. But I've certainly seen that change in the past 10 or 15 years, more so, simply because it's treated as a job, whether part-time or full-time. And even as a volunteer, most agencies that I'm aware of across the country have some type of pay, whether you call it stipend or pay on call or pay per call. All of those things are looked at as a pay. Very few people look at volunteer as I'm volunteering my time and expect nothing out of it other than the gratitude and the joy of helping someone else.
Perfect, Chief. Let's move on maybe to the next slide, and because we, I think, identified the reasons that you might need the transition. Let's move into the next step.
Okay.
Nice. Good work.
There you go. We got to learn how to move the slides. So again, as I mentioned, we're not trying to go through each slide, but I certainly need to catch up. So, and again, I don't know where if we covered some of these things. The community, of course, we were talking about the legal guidance, all the things that are considered, and specifically when I made my transition, or I helped make our transition, I should say, we knew very little about how to pay, how to do that. So you're basically starting a business, starting a small business. So one of the things we did, and maybe suggested, you go find the business model in your community that you want to follow, because you're going to do payroll. There's legal assets or aspects. So again, that in our mind, in my mind, the first person you hire is a legal person or someone that knows the legal parameters and around there. And then again, engage with someone that's been there, someone that's done that. Find somewhere, either in your community or somewhere else in the community, contact the VCOS, call us and ask, who are the model departments that have done this transition. Again, get those best practices from them and make sure you're doing those things to fit your agency. Again, it's going to.
Yeah, perfect, Chief. I think those are all great pieces. I'll take the other side of that, which is your people. And when you look at your membership and you look at your community, one of the challenges that we recognized was we didn't have a clear identity of who we were organizationally, and then also what our community thought we were organizationally. So identifying those stakeholders and identifying those people sometimes has to start with internal. And so we pulled our folks together and started to list, what are the traits of being a member of our organization? What makes a successful member? And when we started to identify those things, we started to create who we were as an organization. Instead of just the generic fire department or volunteer fire department, we started to add some strength behind our members. And then that gave us something that we could convey to our community when we talked to our stakeholders, whether it was our government bodies or our local community home associations, or all those different entities that we should be connected with. We were able to tell a story with them. And by being able to tell a story, it added value to our members, our volunteers, to be a part of that story. And it added a new chapter in the story by saying we're transitioning in this process to identify where we can better serve you by adding some personnel or a personnel or part people. So there's a lot there as far as people are concerned through this process and engaging them and listening to them as a leader.
Yes, sir. And when you're looking at yourself, one of the first things, again, lessons learned is always perfect vision. You know what you can look in the past, or your 2020 vision is always better when you've got some data. So that interview, or that not interview, that review we're talking about, the self-evaluation, whether it's a SWOT analysis or just looking at yourself, one thing that my agency learned is you don't typically talk about your agency or talk about yourself as far as what you're not doing. So maybe bring in mutual aid or an automatic aid company that knows you as well as you know yourself, and kind of ask the question, hey, what are we doing wrong? What are we doing okay? What are we doing right? They will be more honest with than you will be with yourself. So that evaluation from outside certainly is important, that you get input from people that, again, your peer group and the people that you work with on a daily basis, and you get better input that way, because it's going to be a little more honest. It doesn't have to be a contest where you're going to start throwing stones but as long as it's civil and everything's going to be okay. But that review is very important, that you make sure the self-evaluation is true.
You know, Chief, you're spot on. Great information. That one of the things that we found out when we interviewed our county commissioners, who was one part of our governing body, we asked them, what could we do better? What could we improve upon? What would you like to see from your volunteer fire department? I was amazed at what they said. And of what they told us, in our minds, we were already doing. But obviously, we weren't doing it and telling the story that we were doing it to them. Community outreach, community education, all these things that we're doing all the time, they didn't recognize that we were doing it. So ability to ask those questions, be open and honest with yourself, then being able to implement it. It's almost like marriage counseling, right? So you think as a husband or a wife or a spouse or a significant other, you're doing these things, but their perception, your significant other's perception, is the opposite. And so having that marriage counselor that helps you really truly identify what you are as an organization and where you fit in your community, and then to learn from it and grow from it by setting aside your ego and by saying, we can do better and we will do better. So I think that's a great point that you made about those reviews of our organizations.
Yeah, and don't assume the elected officials, like Chief Coy said, don't assume they know what you're doing. I made a mistake, with our agency back then when I was in front of a council meeting, or in front of the council, and one of the members asked the question. She just asked, well, I need to understand, if your agency is all volunteers today, why do you need money? So what I wanted to say is different than what I said, but the point was, she didn't know who we were, and that was our fault. If we're not doing our job and promoting ourselves, promoting the agency. So I just simply asked the question off camera, off mic, and I said, so you've never been in a fire station. You've never been in one of the volunteer fire stations in the county. At that time, there were 19 of them. So you've never visited. So we started doing that. We started inviting the council members in, show them what we do, had reports to the agents or to the council members, what we do, how we do, basically just a snapshot of a monthly call run or call a log, I guess, and started communicating better. They were impressed that we took the time to do that. So don't assume they know what you're doing.
Absolutely. And I think that goes for the community too, right, Chief? That
Absolutely.
Many times your community assumes that it's the traditional old school, good old boy club, whatever went along with some of those images that follow us as organizations. When reality is that most organizations across the country are very professionally run. They pride themselves on professional service. They pride themselves on well-trained organizational values. We need to share that. And we also need to share that there's opportunities in combination organizations for a variety of roles and positions, whether that's drone pilots, whether that's support staff that help after events or do training meals or whatever that might be. There's opportunities to grow besides just what the perception might be of, I need to be 6'2", 180 pounds, lean, drag a 880-pound dummy. That's part of it for some, but there's other positions and opportunities inside those systems.
Correct.
Let me interrupt you for a minute. Can you hear me?
Yes, Tom, we got you.
You guys have, I don't know what the camera, don't worry about that. You guys have just talked about two topics, collaboration and marketing. And it's not that those two are not just about transitioning, they're also about sustaining the current system. So I'm just going to say, would you like to elaborate on that, about how those two things, collaboration and marketing, can help you sustain the volunteer staff part of your department?
Chief, do you want to tackle that first, and I'll add afterwards?
Well, let me ask you to do this. I was going to ask you to do this first because when we and the only reason I say when we started, Facebook was just a little bit later. Facebook was almost unheard of. All the other, social media, we didn't have that. We had newspaper, we had telephones. The ones that hung on the wall or ones that didn't. Those things were the communications. Basically is the same, but the marketing that you have to do on a daily basis is so much easier today, simply because of the assets you have, or the Facebooks and the social media that you have. So again, I'm out of the service now, Chief Coy. So I think you would be a better one to talk about what you're doing with your agency currently. I can tell you what we did, 10 years ago, but currently the marketing that's being done or can be done is much simpler.
Yeah,
So,
I think you get
that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. You touched on a part, right? It's instantaneous marketing, and everything you do, good and bad, is communicated through social media. Which, if you leverage that positivity, and we do it in two folds. We have a public page for our public to see, and we have a closed group page, because you have to market also to your membership. You have to continue to expand upon your values and your organization, what's going on, being servants to them, communicating with them. And social media provides that opportunity to grow internally your membership, but then externally through the public perception is you. And Chief, you know this, and Chief Buckman knows it. You could write today somebody's press release on an incident that occurred in their neighborhood, right? The fire department responded to 12012 College Drive Avenue for a structure fire, and the fire department responded and put the fire out. You could write it. But really, is that telling you what the story is about your combination department or your volunteer department that's transitioning? Sometimes that story is, we were only responded with 3 people because we are struggling with daytime response, and that kind of lays the foundation for that transition. Or we responded with 12 volunteers that left their jobs, and thank you, these businesses, for supporting their local community department. There's opportunities there awaiting for us. I think the key is that we can't do the traditional marketing that we maybe did before, which is just post a banner or flyer and expect people to show up, or just post that traditional press release saying how great we are. It has to be, our folks are great, but these are our challenges in many cases too. And then highlight our people again, so that we can continue to put the people in front of our needs in our community, which is, we need more members, but we honor and respect and trust the members we have, and they're supported by maybe those 1, 2, or a dozen full-time folks that also are important to the organization.
Yeah, and that media is so important for you to have them on your side, so to speak, because again, if you're not telling the media, just the report, like Chief Coy mentioned, is sometimes all we see. But if you can get in front of that camera, and particularly whether it's live or maybe after the fact, the media can help you in so many ways. And if you're not telling your story and they come on to the scene, if you're not in front of them or at least letting them know what's going on, they're going to tell the story the way they want to hear it, or the way they want the audience to hear it. you need to be telling them what the real story is. So,
and Chief Coy, let me add something here for you to ask you that. So what you just talked about is not only celebrate the big successes, but celebrate the small successes. So you want to expand a little bit about that?
Yeah, Chief, you picked up on a piece that I probably didn't do a great job on, but we're in the people business. And a lot of times folks say, well, no, you're in the fire business, Chief. Are you having a senior moment? And no, we're in the people business. We lead members, paid and volunteer, to serve people. And our job as leaders is to celebrate what they do, celebrate how they perform, celebrate the community support, celebrate the business support. If we're not doing that and all we're doing is the cool fire image and taking a picture in front of the fire that happened with our personnel, that's not maximizing the opportunity that you have to grow your organization and recruit more people. So when you celebrate those individual performances, you celebrate the crew's the crew or the engine company's performance internally, that makes an impact, but then also externally to the community, that drives more people to want to be a part of your organization. And when you get that energy rolling in marketing, people start knocking on your door saying, how do I get to be a part of that? I want to see I want to perform on that team that did that great of a job. And when that starts to happen, it starts to drive your organization again for you.
yes, but we have to be careful how we market that, Chief. You know, you said it. We're a people company, people agency. So we don't fight fires every day. In fact, most of the calls, I'm currently with the department here, and I've moved to South Carolina, so I'm down near Myrtle Beach. So I've joined the fire department. Then 90% of our calls on a monthly basis could be handled by two people and a pickup truck. Now, we take a big ladder truck or an engine company, but most calls could be done with two people and a truck, 2 men in a truck, right? So we have to be careful how we communicate that. We're picking Mr. Smith or Mrs. Smith up off the floor and putting her back in their bed or in their chair a lot more often that we want to talk about. So we have to be clear on what our mission is. Our mission is we go to where our calls tell us to go. And again, it's not all fighting fire, and it's not all, taking people out of an automobile accident that's pinned in. But there's a lot of the other things we need to be talking about, particularly when we're recruiting, and then every day going forward.
Chief, I think you nailed it. We have to start with that story, right? When
we should start with that story. Yes.
Yep.
Should.
We hand a set of medical gloves to our new recruits the first night, most of the time, not always, but most of the time, because we want to lay the foundation that if you're expecting to run Chicago fires every day, that's not what it is, right? It's about service. And then to add to that, one of the pieces that we're doing for marketing is we do a follow-up with a 10% of our call volume. And we have a team of volunteers that goes back out and touches base with that citizen that receives service. And they build a relationship. That also then adds to our ability to recruit. It adds to our ability to support. And it's a scorecard for us to say, how did we do? Did we perform to the expectations of our citizens, not just self-grading ourselves? So that marketing piece, Chief, is huge. And Chief Buckman, I think that we got you answered there, correct?
Oh yeah, that was good stuff. I think you just talked about leveraging positivity, and I think don't wait for the negative to come out. Make sure you're telling 9 positive messages to that one negative, because the public is curious. As Ron just said, they see the fire truck going down the road, but they don't see smoke. But they're curious. What were they doing? So I think that's all. It was all great stuff based on my question. Yes. Thank you.
Perfect. Chief, you want to lead us in the next one?
Okay, so I guess we're here at the maybe components of a business plan. So again, we're clear that whether you ever been in business or ever started a business, that's basically what you're doing if you start transitioning or make that transition, I should say, from an all volunteer to some type of paid. because once you start paying, whether it's part-time, full-time, stipend, just giving gifts away is a little bit different. But anytime you start paying, you basically got a contractual agreement with employees. I mean, in some terms, depending on what state, you have to make sure you understand the state rules and what's going on. But the agencies, in a lot of cases, and particularly if the paycheck, or if there is a paycheck coming from somewhere, how is it going to be done? So, and the descriptions, the what happens shouldn't be any different from your volunteers, other than the fact that training is going to be more regular, but in terms of what you're doing, you're basically going to be hiring firefighters from other agencies. That was our experience, and I think that's just about everyone's experience today. If you're starting to make a transition, you're going to start hiring someone. You're most likely not going to get you're not going to be getting calls from people that have never been in the fire service. They're going to be coming from other agencies. They're going to be coming from the fire departments on their off days and working for you. And so again, that business model needs to fit you. And again, in our case, we were part of a large metropolitan area, and our pool of people were very large. So Charlotte Fire Department, Gastonia Fire Department, we pulled from those guys simply because they already knew what was going on. We just paid them, at that time, it was $15 an hour, and paid their extra insurance if they got hurt on our fire scene versus the fire scene on their regular job, or on their professional job, I should say, or career job. Job descriptions, roles and responsibilities. Again, you're not having to rewrite anything because you're already doing the same thing in most cases.
Yep, great stuff, Chief. We took a slightly twist to that same concept, but we looked at it as the family business. And if you can imagine going into the local mom and pop hardware store in your local community versus going to one of the commercial box stores, right? They service their customers differently. Maybe in many cases the same products, but it looks different, it feels different, it sounds different, the experience is different. So we looked at our organization as a family business to keep that business piece of it alive, which is the finances, the payroll, the paying the bills on time, all of those things, the contractual things as Chief talked about. But then we also wanted to add the family part of it. And so what we found as we transitioned, by keeping that family business model in place, we were able to attract people internally from our organization that said, hey, I have 20 hours a week to give for a stipend, or I have 40 hours a month to give for a nominal dollar amount. And we have about 20% of our folks that participate in a stipend plan. 80% don't. They said, you know what, I don't need that. I'm doing it because I want to be part of the team. But in that transition process, we provided opportunities through the family business model.
Jason, I hate to interrupt again, but explain more about your family business model, because you do so much stuff with your family members. I mean, from dinners to, I shouldn't say parties, but events where you involve the family. So explain that a little bit more, please.
We just found, when we identified what it meant to be a part of our organization, that family feel that we talk about in the fire service was priority to them. So we created systems around family. We do a quarterly family dinner in the fire station where we have 60 to 100 folks at those quarterly family dinners. And the department maybe buys the main course, but then the rest of our members bring potluck. And we use those opportunities to celebrate work that's been done, communicate where we're going, and just connect us. We do something called Chuck Bucks right now, which is we had an assistant chief that passed away, line of duty, that will be celebrated and remembered next year at the National Fallen Firefighter Memorial. That was a 25-year volunteer. We created Chuck Bucks, and they're interdepartment little spot awards, spiffs, $10, $5, $10, $20, that officers can give to members to participate, that they can then use in our department store to get swag, new T-shirts, baseball caps, a Yeti cup, that type of stuff. So we're really trying to grow that family piece. When we did the family survey and identified what was important, we also identified from our members that quarterly trainings, not fire department related, having a tax specialist come in the month before tax season is due, having a chef come in and talk about how to make healthy meals, having a physical fitness person come in and do strength and stretching exercises for our members, having we have a PT person, a physical trainer coming in next month to do that. Just things like that. And the membership provided the ideas, and then us as the staff went out and found people that were willing to donate their time to give back to our family to be a part of the group. So we're trying, and we just keep growing it as we can.
That's a great, that to me is thinking outside the box. I do remember that you need to make your fire station comfortable for the family members. So I know some agencies offer childcare, if you will. You know, mom and dad both run the call. Someone's back at the station making sure the children are taken care of. You know, again, big screen TVs are nothing new today. Back in the day, the old guys can say this. We added big screen TVs. We added the video, all the gaming things that you could afford, and we attracted the family members. And again, maybe not the members that were running the calls, but the family members that stay there, and mom and dad would be at the station instead of them worrying about the family members at home when they were at the station. So it's got to make sense for the family members. You're exactly right.
There's a new family member that we're not even acknowledging, and we're building a new station right now that's a combination station, and we're trying to figure out how to design a suite that work from home individuals can work at the station on their regular job, that looks in a professional setting, that gives them a quiet environment, but when the tones drop, can hop on a rig and go work. And the thought process with that is we have a large influx of new community members that moved out of the Denver metro area to Cheyenne here, but still work for big companies that allow them to work from home. But when you work from home, you miss the water cooler talk, you miss the camaraderie, you miss all those pieces. And by creating a space in the station for them, we're hoping, and this is one of those, we're trying something, we don't know if it's going to work, that we can attract those work from home men and women to come work in our station on their real job and then participate for fun in our organization when the call drops. So again, just being creative to grow that transition as we grow as an organization.
That makes sense. And again, we didn't even think about some of those things then. COVID taught us we can work from any environment. As long as you have your cell phone, a good signal, a computer, and a Wi-Fi, you can be working from anywhere in the world. And with the backdrops, mine's live happens to be, you can make your backdrop where you could be anywhere in the world, literally. So COVID has taught us those things that we could do. So that makes a lot of sense and a lot more opportunities for those family members. But the other thing that I think this slide's still up just to keep us on track, the ensure that those volunteers continue to have the input and the priority. I went out of my way to make sure the volunteers basically got what they asked for. So if, for instance, one of the volunteers, his day off was Wednesday. Okay. So every Wednesday he had a day off. His wife was working. He didn't have small children. So he came to the fire station. He wanted to drive the truck. That's all he wanted to do. And I said, I have no problem with that as long as you understand how to pump the truck, not just drive it. The truck is yours. So you run that rig. And then if someone came in for the day, they wanted to volunteer, we had 3 paid or 4 paid staff on the rig. If that volunteer wanted to ride the seat, he or she got that opportunity as long as they could make it, as long as they fit, as long as they could do the job. So if they wanted to be the captain for the day, if they wanted to be the engineer for the day, that was their call as long as they could handle the job. So that firefighter, that paid firefighter might be bumped to the back of the bus or back seat or riding backwards for the day if the firefighter wanted to do that. And I went out of my way to do that, make sure those volunteers still felt important, still felt like we're not going to be running them off. And I'm assuming that's all still going good today at my agency anyway. So,
yeah, that goes back to hiring the right people, right? Whether they're part-time or full-time, it comes back to that mindset change that if we hire the wrong people, they think it's their truck and lose sight of that. When the volunteers come in, it's important to make sure that we fit what the volunteer needs while they're there, whether it's training or opportunity to drive or opportunity to run command or whatever that is, if they're qualified, but also cater to them to allow them to grow. And if we hire the wrong people, we squash that in many cases, and the volunteer stops coming around, and then we're in a really big trouble issue because we don't have the funds to hire more people, correct?
Right. So to talk a little bit about the department data that's up here now. So a lot of this we've already mentioned, most of it anyway. So the staffing levels, all of these items that you're looking to do or you're looking to change, it should be coming from the data that you've already been used to getting. So you're making that transition because you're most cases, it's likely that you're not making the runs. You're missed calls, or you've missed enough calls to whether the agency, the state, in our case, the state mandated you missed a call, you're on probation. You missed 2 calls, you might be out of business, or someone else came in and did the job for you. So though your data, that information that you're taking off your call reports, is what's going to drive the training, or excuse me, the data that's going to make your staffing levels what you want them to be. And then the peer group standards, again, like we mentioned, go to the departments that are doing a good job and find out how they're doing it, what they're doing. So the data in most cases is overlooked, and a lot of times today we just need to stay in front of what's going on, and the data is going to show us what we're doing and what we're not doing. So
yeah, and good data in equals good data out.
Exactly.
And we're not great as a fire service, especially in maybe some of those early years of your organization. We didn't collect a lot of great data, but we need to. And we're tracking how many hours our volunteers are participating, both training and on shift and on calls and special activities. Giving that annual or quarterly or annual report of data back to your organization, highlighting those pieces is good, but also sharing it with your community impacts them. When we can say that our volunteers donated over 1,600 hours last month, that's compelling to people. So data is very important for us.
Yeah, I've always been data driven, and I always like the data. Today, the more and more we go to the national conferences or the state conferences, we're hearing more and more about data. Data is so important. And the fire administrator today is data driven, and we all should be. I just happen to have that, I guess, that niche when I was doing it because I like the data. Show me, don't tell me is how I basically always did that. So again, the science today is not where it used to be. When I started, we didn't have science to put out a fire. Today, science tells us how and what we've done wrong, what we're doing right. So that I wish I went in the building today versus 50 years ago. But again, that changes with birthdays.
While we have this slide up, Chief, let's just talk a little about scheduling needs. A lot of times we pigeonhole our organizations into fitting what we see other organizations do as far as staffing and scheduling. Again, keep this local and don't be afraid to recognize that a mixture of staffing and schedules might be more beneficial for your community because of your local industry, your local, maybe you have a local manufacturer that runs shift work. So maybe that you have folks off during the day or maybe Thursday nights.
Right.
So again, when we look at that, don't just think you have to do X or Y, be creative. So our full-time staff, we started with me full-time first. And as you know, as a chief, you're on 24/7.
Correct.
And the energy that you put in is the energy that you get out from the people around you, as we discussed earlier. As we added a couple more staff in support roles of our volunteers, it would have been easy just to schedule them Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. But what that ended up doing was creating a separation: staff during the day, volunteers at night, and there wasn't this cohesiveness. So we looked at our schedule and said, hey, we're going to schedule you 4 days a week, but you're going to work 2 day shifts and 2 mid shifts. And the mid shift is 11 a.m. to 8 p.m. And what that did is it bridged the gap to keep the continuity and the priority on our volunteers and our staff working together, so that we didn't have this us versus them. And on top of that, we said you're going to work every 4th or 5th weekend, depending on how the rotation was, again, to continue that continuity. So it didn't feel like us versus them through this transition phase. It allowed everybody to have a seat at the table and improve the communication amongst our membership, which includes paid folks and also volunteer folks.
Yep. And again, that data can tell you everything. How many calls you're doing obviously is one thing, but time of day, your busiest time of day, your busiest day of the week, all of those things, if you read the data and drill down into it, and again, like you said, Chief, data in, data out. If it's not in there, you're not going to get it out. But make sure you document well enough. And in fact, we went to where at one point, all of our members, whoever was writing the report, they finished that report. Yeah. And then we changed that when we hired an administrative person. We changed that to made it a lot more consistent. So that consistency in the data told us a lot more than just halfway doing a report just to put it into the system.
Perfect.
So
let me add, sir, Jason, about the different shift models. I think that's a pretty new idea. I've not heard it talked about in various places where we go in the VCOS, but I thought it's a great idea because, like you said, it doesn't mean everybody has to start at 8 o'clock. So maybe expand upon that a little bit. What is the benefit that has been for the volunteers?
Boy, I wish they were here to answer it, because they're the ones that could give us that. But what I'm hearing, Chief, is that by bridging that gap, so that when a volunteer member comes in at, let's say, 6 o'clock after the end of their 40-hour work day for their paid job, they have a staff member that can share what's going on in the organization. They have a staff member that can help facilitate training. They have a staff member that might be able to help that individual with individual goals that they're trying to accomplish. On top of that, we put our volunteers into platoons, and then they have a volunteer platoon leader and captain and so we could take our organization and shrink the size of it, right? So we have 120 folks roughly, give or take, each day. And we have those 4 platoons. Now you have 30 people in each platoon. Makes it smaller so that they have connectivity to the organization. They have unity amongst themselves. They can achieve their goals. And we rotate that annually so we don't build silos in the system. But for the career folks, it gives them an opportunity to work with all of our different members throughout their month or year, because they're at station 72 at 8 p.m. at night, and Jane Smith comes in to pull her shift. They get a couple hours to sit and talk and share and teach and learn and listen, all those pieces. So it helps, I think, our organization hopefully prevent that us versus them, staffing versus volunteer, and then alienating the volunteers or alienating the staffing, etc.
Thank you.
perfect. So the system, I've got the right slide up there. Yeah, the system types of staffing. Again, a lot of this we've already talked about, whether it's all volunteer, whether you're doing part-time, paid on call, paid per call, or whether you're hiring full-time. That obviously is going to depend on your budget and the dollars or the money you have to spend for personnel. And then the scheduling, again, Chief Coy just spoke about that, and make the schedule fit your agency. So I don't know, again, when I present this, and in most cases, there's a couple of questions that are always going to come up. And one of the questions, I guess, is how do you recruit? How do you retain? That's a little different, but we're all doing that on a daily basis. We should be. The other issue that comes up is the FLSA rules, the Fair Labor Standards Act. And again, this is, like I said, it's going to change your system anytime you start paying a member. So just keep in mind, we could talk hours about the FLSA rules, but the easiest thing to do, there is a document that you see here on the screen. We used to print these things just like the ribbon report. They're not printed anymore, but you download all these. You just go to the website. I think it's the next slide I'll get to. It's got a link to go to download this. But this is a live document that basically takes some case history and talks about managing through the FLSA compliance. And basically the bottom line is anytime your volunteer becomes some type of paid person, they can no longer volunteer for that agency. So that's the rule of thumb. Does it happen in most cases from what I see? But again, we're not the police. We're not going to come and tell you, other than we're going to show you the information you can get from the proper people. So let me see if this, no, okay. So the slide I was looking for.
Ron, let me interrupt because we're down
Yes,
to about 8 minutes.
Yes, sir.
And the webinar, the FLSA document is very important for anybody hiring people. One of the things that, I don't remember which one of you said it early on, hiring the right legal person. If
Correct.
you're going to hire an attorney, make sure they're a labor experienced attorney, because if they're not, you're going to spend a lot of money paying for them to do research, and you can't afford that. So I would say that. So I'm just giving you guys a couple minutes to, I'll fill in a few seconds here, what you guys want to close with as we start to wrap this thing up. You also mentioned about the work from home space at the fire station. I think that was a brand new kind of idea. I know one fire department that does that. Jason, I think you may have already answered that, but one of the requests from the chat was if you could upload your membership survey to the handout section as we get done with this. So Ron, I will go to you first and say, what have we not covered that you thought we might get to in this 1 hour presentation?
Well, there's a few things, I guess, lessons learned. So most agencies are going to have a little bit different reaction or what they would do different if they started all over today. But again, I understand that the PowerPoint is available if anyone wants to download that. But the biggest thing is the cultural change. We just have to make sure we know this is going to change. We know it's going to change your agency. You just have to make that change that fits you. The culture in the fire department certainly has changed, and it's going to continue to change. And just like Chief Coy mentioned, if you can offer that work from the office, that's going to eliminate a lot of negative that people is going to give you. Well, I've got my work schedule won't allow me to do this. Again, there's a lot of things that we can adapt to. There may be failures, and in most cases there's going to be, but the only thing I can ask for any new chief officer or elected official when they start this process to, as Chief Buckman also mentioned, make sure you're getting the right people involved. And again, my first person I hired was that attorney I spoke about. So I know that firsthand, that had we not done that, there would have been a lot of work that we probably would have overlooked or would not have done and had to go back and redo it. So having that correct labor attorney to tell you how you can, and when you start paying, what changes in your agency. Communications is always going to be, none of us communicate too well in most cases and on a daily basis. So better communications for all stakeholders is, I guess, probably most identified.
All right, Ron, thank you. Jason,
I,
closing comments?
yeah, absolutely. Chief did a great. I think some of the areas that I would suggest folks look at when they look through the PowerPoint is identify the pitfalls and try to identify locally what your challenges are going to be. And if you are pushing to hire folks, if that's the goal, the best interest for your community, then communicate the why so that your folks understand why we're doing this, and then reassure them, build trust with your membership that they're not getting ousted. And if you try to do this with an iron fist, if you try to transition your organization from volunteer to combination with an iron fist, it's probably not going to be very successful. You have to be compassionate and caring. And we did that. We recently, 2 years ago, merged with another organization that was all volunteer. And of course, there's lots of threats when you merge. We're not going to get the service we need. We're not going to get the training. We're going to get ousted. All the money's going to go to the bigger agency, all those things. Well, the same is true as you add staffing in a volunteer organization. So we sat down and broke bread. We had dinner with our members in that community. We had dinner with our members in our community. We answered questions. We heard them. We facilitated discussions so that we could get all their concerns on the table. Then we were able to come with suggestions. And I had folks that said, well, I can't even get my shoes on and get out the door. Engine company's responding to the call. And I said, who's that bad for? And they said, well, nobody but me. I said, okay, so here's the solution. And we provided an avenue for them to be participating and feel still valued in the organization when maybe they weren't making the first truck or engine like they used to as the traditional pager model went. So break bread, identify pitfalls, address them, listen to them, come up with solutions together, then move forward and keep the service focus on your community, but also on your members.
All right. Well, I want to thank Ron and Jason for coming on and doing this for us. I think we know, the VCOS knows that this is a hot topic. There is a recording of this event, so if you want to share some of this stuff with your officers or maybe your recruitment and retention coordinator, please do that. Please complete the survey that you'll get when we do end this. That is how you get your certificate. You will get a certificate of attendance. I will say that next month we're doing a webinar on paid on call staffing models. That is one of the models you guys mentioned that several times in here, but it's not been talked about very much. So many people don't know it. The calls I get says when the fire chief wants to start doing this, it's like, oh, my city clerk says no. She doesn't know how, or he doesn't know how to handle part-time employees. So then you got to get legal involved and get that answered. So, we're going to do a paid on call webinar next month and have some chiefs that have experienced this come and share their experiences and lessons learned. So I hope you'll attend that. My final thing, Jason, is you've just mentioned merging. I became board president of my fire department again 3 years ago, and I just completed the legal issues of consolidating 4 governmental entities into one. And I'm actually giving my fire department away to an existing fire protection territory. Now, that doesn't mean we're going to lose total control, but a couple things you mentioned right there is exactly what, oh my gosh, they're going to not have an ambulance in our district like it's supposed to. Oh no, that fire chief isn't that dumb. He knows he got to do what the contract says. Yeah. So, but maybe we need to look at merging as a webinar in the coming months as well, as the pitfalls and the good things that happen in merging. So, with that, again, I want to thank both of you for coming on here. I know you guys were sort of like, we got the slides, but I knew that both of you could pull this off and give some very valuable information. So thank you very much. And Ron, any closing comment?
No, sir. I can tell you that you just hit a button that merging and consolidation is, in my mind, the wave of the future, because it needs to happen more. It needs to happen more often. And the more we can talk about that, the more we can promote that. So I'm here for that. Perfect.
All right, Jason.
Great stuff, Chief. Thanks for the opportunity. And like all of us, we're just trying to figure it out and do the best for our members in our community. So we make just as many mistakes as we have successes, and that's how you learn and grow.
Yeah. Well, again, for those that are in here, and we do have our friend Nuno from Puerto Rico's on here. So he's one of our most consistent attendees. And someday I'm actually going to talk to him on the phone versus virtually. But we certainly appreciate our international attendees, because usually we'll have 3 or 4 international attendees, not just those from the United States or Canada. So we thank again all of our attendees today. Hopefully you got some information out of here. Use the recorded version for maybe your officers meeting to talk about some of these kind of issues. And God bless each and every one of you, and stay safe. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief.